Chin lifted slightly, get out of your neck. Press your hands down again, really strong into the legs. Feel that back muscle flex. Lift it. Drop the shoulders again as you draw the back ribs in towards each other. Stretch your side ribs forward and pick your front ribs up. So you can really let your neck, shoulders go and let your eyes close for a minute. All right. So here we are. Here you are on your mat, in your space. On your practice. So as you start your practice, my offer is that you reflect for a moment on where your practice has brought you already. What has it brought you in your life? And you can start with the big things. I can say my practice has brought me a certain level of health that I didn't have before. A community that I didn't have before. A partner. And so forth. So as you start to think about the things that your practice has brought you, my offer is that recognize that your practice didn't give them to you. The practice gave you an opportunity for you to create those in the world. My health, I didn't drink a tonic, didn't just read a book. I had to put the work in, and the practice helped heal my body. The practice gave me the opportunity to be me and caring and loving around people to build community. The practice inspired me to open a place of business that I met my partner. The practice isn't giving us these things. The practice allows us to create these things in the world. It's kind of like having wishes. I'm not saying that the practice of yoga will give you every single thing that you ever hope, dream, desire, but what it might do is help you create around you and in you and through you the beginnings of those things, and maybe ultimately those things being real in the world, even more so. That yoga, the practice of yoga, is a channeling of all the wonder of you, all of your inner joy and compassion, strengths, expressions of weakness or fear, love in healthy ways. That all of these things exist in you. In Kundalini, they only talk about opening the chakras. It never says that you have to be given the energy. It all already exists. So all these positives that you might say, yoga gave these to me. My offer is to recognize that yoga didn't give it to you. Yoga offered you a way to channel all the things that are already in you so that these things could be manifest in your life. So let your practice today, my friends, be one of being receptive, not to just the poses, but being receptive to all the wondrous power inside you that is the power to create, to express, not just already what you have, but a continued creation of things that we cannot even begin to imagine yet. Relationship, wonder, health, and whatever else you need or the world needs. Take a breath, and as you exhale, bring the palms together at the chest, thumbs touching the sternum. We'll Om shortly 3 times and begin. Take a nice breath in. Om. 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 All right, for a moment, salute the essence of yoga inside yourself. Bring your hands into your lap, let your head rise, and your eyes open. All right, it's nice to see everybody. Good. All right, so sorry for my dog is adding to the scene here. Let's go ahead and come to a standing position. Let's do some things to open up the pelvis a little bit. We'll continue a little bit of the work into what we ultimately do with Padmasana or lotus pose, and how it actually gets applied in other yoga poses. Because over the past few weeks, we've been talking about it seated, but you know, you do lotus pose upside down and all sorts of other forms of it. So we're going to start kind of thinking about how we move our body into those poses and in those spaces. So stand in Tadasana, please. Thighs together, feet together, heels touching. So Tadasana for a moment, activating the thighs, rotating them in, pushing the thigh bone back. So instead of leaning your body forward, right, when we sit at a computer desk a lot, we end up leaning forward a lot. We push our body weight forward. Push your body weight back so the muscles of your legs, the muscles of your core engage. You tap into the strength you already have instead of hoping for something new. Right? The backside of your body has existed your whole life. Use it. You don't need to have a new one. Stretch both arms up, palms facing in. Interlace your fingers and turn your palms up to the ceiling. Baddha Kolasana for a moment. Turning up through the palms, stretch up through the inner and outer arm. Try not to let your body weight lean forward towards the front side of the body, but keep moving your body weight to the back so you're still feeling that flexion, lift, that activeness that is standing tall. Working against gravity a little bit. If you ever feel like you're just so stooped and you can't quite find the thing to stand up, lean your body weight back. Your muscles will do their work. Hold the pose for a few breaths. Checking in with your legs. Is each leg working as much as each arm? Take a breath and check in with yourself. How are you feeling about this? What's coming up for you here? What are you having to create or put out to do the pose? Is it determination? Is it patience to get through it? Is it ease? Who's showing up in this yoga pose? Everybody showed up to class. You're already loving, caring, devoted students. Congratulations. But who's showing up in the yoga pose? Turn the palms down, look up at your hands and change the lacing of the fingers so the opposite set of fingers are laced on top. Turn your palms back up. If you can still look up, go for it. So you start to stretch the front, back side of the head. Find your breath. And if some part of you shows up in the pose that you don't like, right? I've had lots of angry Dustin or sad Dustin or parts like that show up in my yoga practice. It means that it's just time for that to be here. Time for that to be worked through with and continued out. Remember, yoga is the art of yoking mind to body. Is reconnecting those two parts that may be disconnected. Take a nice deep breath in, bring the arms down. Turn so you're facing down the length of your yoga mat. And you might have a couple blocks on the other end from where you're facing, just for some of the standing poses. So standing towards the back end of your mat, on an exhale, take a nice long step forward, about 3 foot with your right foot. You're going to wobble a little bit, that's okay, but take that long stride out. Because what we want to do in the action is try to get your legs not just to be strong, but to get comfortable just moving them in lots of different directions and actions and rotations on their own. Just like I said, when we do lotus pose, it's not just sitting on the floor, pulling our legs up with our arms to twist us in a pretzel, but it's really about, can we create the active rotation strength of the legs so that when we're in other poses, like when you do headstand and then full lotus, can you make your legs do the pose just without your arms doing a lot of the work? Both legs nice and straight. Stretch your left heel down towards the floor. So you're stretching through that leg. You're flexing that left quad and extending through the back heel and leg. So you get that nice active leg. And then you really feel how your body wants to tilt forward because your back was doing it. So the more you push through your back leg, flex your right thigh and push through your front leg so your chest can lift up. And again, feel how your body weight wants to shift forward. Shift your body weight back, so that your muscles of your core have to help activate too. And you might feel tightness, you might feel a little bit of struggle with that. Great, happy for you. Bend your right knee into warrior one. Doesn't have to be a complex warrior one, we're just doing a little bit of kind of feeling what it is to bend the knee. And can you keep as much action in your back leg as well as your front leg? Can you keep moving your body weight towards the back side of the body rather than letting it hang into the front? Stretch both arms up for a moment. Stretch through the legs, stretch through the arms. Step your right foot back next to your left foot, Tadasana. Just try to stick the landing, feet together. Step your left foot forward on an exhale. Straighten both legs. Work your back leg first. Get your back heel stretching towards the floor. Get your back leg active as your body weight is in your front leg. Shift things to the back. Lean your upper body back, both sides of it equally. Then when you're ready, exhale, bend the left knee. Stretch that left thigh out away from you. Then take both arms up. Start to kind of find that balance of each leg. One does not overwork more than the other. Their work is different, but both should have some weight-bearing aspect of the pose. Remember to breathe. Good. Step your left foot back next to the right. Arms down for a moment. Step your right foot forward again. Now this time, after you step your foot forward with both legs straight, remember, opening up the hips is not just about the outer hip muscles, but it's also about the inner groin and pelvis, the base pelvic muscles, the perineum and all that lower stuff we sit on a lot. When you step your right foot forward, make sure you did not step one foot in front of the other. So your right foot does not step in front of your left. So you're not standing like in a kind of T or a check mark. Actually move your right foot out a little bit. So your right foot's directly in line with your right hip and your left foot is directly in line with your left hip. It's going to feel different. But one of the reasons that I think some people have trouble with this pose is they narrow their feet too close to the center line instead of keeping their feet more in line with their hip. So now rotate your body to face out over the right thigh. And when you bend the right knee again, go ahead and do so. And you stretch through that left leg. Can you stretch from your right hamstring, the bottom side of the leg, to the back of the knee? And then can you stretch from your front left thigh away from the groin? So if the right hamstring is moving forward, your left thigh is stretching back to the heel. So it's like it's trying to pull the front of your left pelvis back and your hamstrings pulling your right groin forward. So there's a pulling action from that point. The width, the taking the feet wider, actually is just there to give you some more space to release the tight inner groin muscle and stuff like that. Feels a little different, huh, Tris? Not as hard a fight, is it? She says it's always a fight regardless. Go ahead, stretch both arms up for a moment, complete the pose. Can you lean your upper body back now that your feet are a little wider? Yes. When you take your feet apart a little bit like we did, what you've done is actually release the inner groin so the pelvis can stretch and flex all the way up through your back and allow your upper spine to extend. You might feel more wobbly, but that's okay. We're here to be wobbly, right? We're here to see who shows up when we're wobbly. As much as we would like for life to be nice and stable, we're often wobbly, right? Step your right foot back next to your left foot. Take a nice breath, bring your arms down, then step your left foot forward. When you step your left foot forward, notice how you step your left foot very close to in front of your right foot. Step your left foot forward, but a little to the side so it's more in line with your left hip, and your right foot's in line with your right hip. Then once you do that, bend the knee, stretch that left hamstring towards the knee, flex that right thigh and stretch it back towards the heel. Then take both arms up, start the pose. Push down through the feet so you can lift the chest. Flex your right thigh. There you go. Keep that right leg really active. So you're not just letting the right leg hang forward. Remember, it's about distributing the action and weight equally to the front and back. Even though they're not symmetrical, you're still working for a balanced engagement. And wobbly's okay. It's much better wide stance, everybody. Very good. Take your left foot back to your right foot. Step your right foot forward on an exhale when you're ready. Exhale, right foot forward. So now, bend the right knee again towards the warrior one action. Take both hands onto the floor and next to your right foot. Now, if you need blocks under your hands, please, or a chair, please, by all means, get those for yourself so you're not struggling. But you're just in a modified lunge with your, making sure your right foot is not directly in front of your left foot. Same thing. Give yourself the acknowledgement that your hips are not like a balance beam narrow. Oh, I got some width to our hips. And so right foot is not in front of left, it's slightly out to the side. What's up, Triz? Oh. Slowly straighten your right leg, and when you push your right leg hip back, think for a moment, can you feel your hip? Can you stretch the inner right thigh and the outer right thigh back at the same time? So it pushes the right buttock back as you roll your left hip forward. So you get a little bit of chest and knee pose for a moment. You know, it's a pose we've all done dozens of times, but can you emphasize a part of the practice where I said before, it's about creating the leg mobility for the legs to be comfortable bending and straightening and rotating when we do seated poses like Padmasana. Can you use your standing poses to help create that fluidity? So instead of overworking the leg, locking it tight, try to let the leg be strong, but also have some wiggle to it. So like if someone pushed on your knee a little bit, there'd be some freedom to that leg's movement. Remember, we don't teach rigidity in yoga, even though it is easy to think that the yoga practice, especially in the Iyengar tradition, is very rigid. I think does a great disservice. You're supposed to have some fluidity or movement to the body. Even in these poses, you should be able to move in and out of them with grace. You watch the old videos of Mr. Iyengar, that guy was always flying in and out of stuff. Bend your right knee again. Bring your body up. Keep the knee bent as you come up, And then exhale, step the right foot back to the left foot. And step your left foot forward. Make sure you do not step the left foot in front of the right foot. It's going to sound counterintuitive, even counteractive to what some people have taught, but you know, you signed up for this class today. Bend the left knee, take both hands onto the floor. If you want to use blocks under your hands or a chair out for your hands, please do so. Then slowly lengthen that left leg. And notice when you lengthen it, and you pull the left hip, outer left hip back and the inner left thigh back. So you're lengthening both the inner and outer part of the leg at the same time, or does one part do more of the work than the other? And that may just be from being tight and you have to do it a few times, or it just takes some awareness. Roll the right hip forward to help try to stretch that hip joint. You are super tight in that hip today. And just check in with your body. Who's showing up inside this practice? Which part of you? Because really your practice is about communing with that part of yourself. The part of yourself that gets frustrated or happy or angry being here. Lean to your right. Now roll your right hip down. All right, bend your left knee. Bring your chest up, body up. Step your left foot back to your right foot. Step your right foot forward again. Take both hands onto the floor. So from here, walk your right foot towards the left side of your mat. So your right knee can turn out to the side and fall towards the floor. Like you're going to pigeon pose, because that's where you're going. But yep, let your body come forward so your right shin bone and knee comes towards the floor. Now, if you're tight, unlike Tristan here can get her hips to the floor pretty comfortably. If you cannot get your hips onto the floor, you're going to use a block under your right buttock to give some height to the hip. If you can't see what she's doing, so right shin in front of the body, moved across the mat, right knee turned out to the side, block under her hip. So Rajapitchasana, pitch pose. You want some support under your hip. If your hips can't lay naturally on the floor comfortably, don't force it. Don't hang in the air. Because there's some fun stuff about this pose that really helps our seated poses as we go. One, because it stretches the hip deeply, but two, it opens the base pelvis quite a bit. All right. So from Rajapitchasana, keep your arms straight, your chest lifted. What I would like for you to do is, remember in past classes I've talked about when you get to a pose, where should you be working should always be the parts that are already touching the floor instead of pushing down on the parts that have no support. So if we check in, regardless of your hip mobility, everyone's right foot should still be touching the floor. Yes? Great. Everyone's left knee should still be touching the floor in their left foot. Doesn't matter if your right knee or your right hip is on the floor or not. Go to your feet first. Point your feet. And remember, if your feet look like this, this is a flex. This is a point. Point your feet and push the foot down into the floor as hard as you can. Not by pushing your knees down, but flex the thigh muscles, the large quads, and push the foot down into the floor harder, just like we do in Padmasana or those other seated poses, on the front and especially on the back. Try to push down and stretch the big toe and pinky toe side of the left foot back. So it's an extension and depression. The front leg is a depression. Notice how you shrugged your shoulders up and pushed your back body to your front body to try and push down on your foot. Be aware, don't do that. Remember, this was about moving your body weight to the back. So can you push down through your right foot? And if your right ankle touches the floor, push your right ankle into the floor. If your right shin lays on the floor, push your right shin into the floor. If your right knee's on the floor, push it into the floor. But only push down to that which is already supported by the earth. Once you do that, lift your chest up a little higher. Can you shift your body weight from the front abdominal region towards the back a little bit? And that means your front leg has to push down to lift you up. No different than when you're standing, your thigh muscles must push up against gravity. She's getting it. Everyone's in the stretch, I can tell. You're all smiling so politely, you're staring out your windows, trying to be zen about things. Take your right arm straight up into the air. When you take your right arm straight up, can you still keep your balance by working your legs more? If you feel your balance or your whole body twist and lean, that really means you weren't working your hips. You were trying to use your shoulder and arms to balance you, and you were just too low. If you can't take an arm up, that means you probably need more support under your hip or something like that. And your hip's going to get real cranky and tired and stretchy. Wah. I'm happy for you, right? Everyone signs up for the sarcastic Dustin. Right arm down, take your left arm up. Try that. See how you want to lean or fall on that way. So can you work your legs, pushing down through whatever's already touching the floor harder, so there's a base muscular active lift. That's what opens the pelvis in these poses. Take both arms up. Try. And if you can't, that means you're too low. You need to put some more support under your hip, or you need to push especially your right foot harder down. Bring your arms down. Don't worry, we're going to do both sides a couple times. Don't worry, you're going to get them both. Swing push your hands into the floor, lift your hips up. Back to Tadasana. However you want to get there, get there. Start back over at the very beginning. This is how we're having you get into it is important to opening up the groin muscle. Because when we start seated and swing our leg around into pigeon pose, that's a nice way to work the hips, but it doesn't get to the inner bottom pelvis as much. Step your left foot forward, 3 foot. Make sure you step your left foot slightly to the left. Do not step it in front of the right. Get used to opening up the base pelvis. Bend the left knee, take both hands to the floor. Walk your left foot to the right side of your mat. Let your left knee fall down. Your hips go down to the ground. Prop a block under your hip if you need. If you found you needed more support on the other side, give yourself that extra support on this side. Extra block, blanket, pillow, whatever you got. Do what you can do. Garden hose if you're outside, right? Probably got a lawn gnome that you can prop your hip up with. There's all sorts of fun stuff. You got to make use of whatever you can in the world you have around you. All right. So remember that idea of pushing down what's already connected to the ground, using that as the base support, is there to help you activate the muscles of the leg, hip, and back, and actually base pelvis and lift. So your left foot and right foot should be touching the floor, regardless of how high your hips are. So point your left foot and right foot, actively point them away from the rest of the body, right? Point. Push them hard into the floor so you feel that there might be some pelvic movement or chest or back movement. You're starting to just try and teach yourself to use your legs to lift up out of this motion. One of the reasons that pigeon pose is a really great hip opener is that it actually can release your back and your psoas muscles if you use the legs. Remember the psoas muscles, those 5-letter bad words, they run from our inner groin through our pelvis to our low back. They're the muscle that makes it so we can stand upright, unlike dogs. Those muscles active flexing allows this human shape that we are in. So by using those, by activating, pushing through the legs, those muscles will flex and lift, and they also have to stretch. That's how we actually create some freedom of movement in the low back. Push the left foot down, push the right foot down, stretch the leg back as you push the foot down. So there's an extension. You're moving your body weight from being all pushed to the front, distributing some back here by extending that back leg, just like Warrior Two. And as you work that leg back, as you literally slide that thigh back and push through the front and back leg, you might find you can lift your chest up higher. Feel free to do so. Please do so. Tristan's just got her fingertips touching the floor, and she's actively working her legs to lift her chest. Would that be a fair assessment? She says yes. But asking her would be like having a plant in an audience in a magic show, right? I need a volunteer from the audience. We've never met before, right? She's opting for a softer prop, which is good. So as you're here, work more on flexing your leg muscles and pushing your legs down into the ground to try and teach your back to lift, to start even working that lifted spinal action. Too low. And then take your left arm straight up. If you feel like you're going to fall, probably need more height so you can work your legs a little clearer. And that's when you get that part of yourself that shows up when the teacher calls you out, right? Who's he think he is? Doesn't know me. I don't need no prop. Everybody needs some support sometime. Take your right arm up, left arm down. Try to see where your balance is. Don't worry, we're going to do this again on each side. You're going to have a chance to wrestle with your own ego. Both arms up. Push that left foot down into the floor harder, Proxima. Make that leg very strong, dear. Ooh, there you go. Come on, both arms up, Kaya. You can do it. Good, excellent. Bring the arms down. Push your hands into the floor, bring your body up. Come up out of the pose. Switch legs again. Right foot forward. Just get to the pose however which way you want. Everyone has a way they practice this pose. I want you to have your way of getting into it. So if you want to come up like Tristan and step the foot forward and come down, that's fine. If you just want to sling the leg forward, fine. Never let it be said, I'm not open to the student having their experience in class and showing me something so we can grow together. All right, but regardless of how you got there, prop your right hip up if you cannot get your right hip comfortably to the floor. Oh, excuse me. And if on each side last time you found it hard to lift your chest up or hard to pick your arms up in the air, please prop your hips up higher. Trust me on this. You'll get way more work out of it. Because I'm going to offer a little modification to this. As you're here in this pose, before we even start lifting, one of the ways that this pose can be very difficult for us is if we try to, what I call, narrow the groin of the pose. Just like when you stepped your feet apart a little wider in Warrior One, Tristan said it made it different for her. She could lift easier. The same is true here. I've always taught this. I've always been clear about this. When you're in your pose, if your right knee is directly in front of your right hip, you're narrowing the groin muscles so you can't actually pick up from the psoas. So if you look down and your right knee is directly in front of your right hip, you need to move your right knee to the outside of the hip so the right inner groin opens. A couple inches to the outside. Any amount is okay. This isn't the splits. Hanunumasana is where you have one leg directly in front and the other leg directly back, right? That's the splits. That's where you're rotating them into the inner groin. pigeon pose, Pratyapitya, is a rotated hip opener. So your knee needs to rotate out and allow the inner groin to open. So now that your right knee is slightly to the outside of the right hip, push your right foot harder into the floor. If your right knee is touching the floor, feel free to push your right knee harder into the floor. And then stretch your left leg back. Really lengthen that quad. And now try to lift your chest up a little. Take both arms up into the air. Woo! Some of you are flying now. Look at that. Much better, Pratima. See how much more balanced you are? Very good. So there's a balancing to this. Nice, Lena. That's really good hip opening. Good, Sanju. Nice arms in the air. Very good. Shaya, try to take your arms up. All right, bring your arms down. Very nice. Take your legs out. Switch to the other side. Do the other side now with the now awareness about opening the inner groin, making space so the base pelvis muscles can be active in the lift. So you're not fighting yourself. You're learning how to help yourself kind of get all these different movements and pieces and parts. So once your left hip's in place, your right leg's back behind you. Look at your left knee. Make sure your left knee is open to the outside of the hip. So you're opening that inner left groin. And then push the feet down and your knees down so you start feeling some leg and muscle flexion to lift. Now this is hard actually. I'm not trying to sell this as an easy thing. What it is though, it just takes a lot of focus to actually push down through the legs to get the spinal lift like that. And so if you're not like popping up immediately, don't worry. We all sat so much, like there's a lot of pressure and gravity down on us. So from here, push those left feet, the left foot, the right foot down. Flex the legs, keep the legs flexed, even though they may not be like squeezing something, but they can flex and stay pushing down on the ground. Take both arms up, see what lift you got. And notice one side is much harder than the other. When my left leg's in front, I can pop both arms up and my back doesn't cramp that much. My right leg's in front, oh, cramping. Very good, Pratima. Better lift. Chaya, move your left knee to the left, dear. More. Yeah. More of that. Don't move your whole pelvis. Bring your pelvis towards me and your knee towards your wall. Everyone can stay in the pose. We'll wait. They're happy to wait for you. They're your loving students. Now try to lift your chest up, Chaya. Now lift your arms up. See? See the difference? You can get some height now. Good. Bring your arms down, everybody. Very good. Come out of the pose. Have a seat on something, whether it's a block or blanket, something like that. You want to face the chair. Or a bolster. You can do anything like that. So that same idea is true here in our seated poses. Right? So if we did like this opening from the groin out, a lot of standing poses kind of help show us this action of moving the knee to the outside of the groin so we open the pelvis. It's moving a little bit. So let's just take a second look at what it is to sit and squeeze the thighs towards the groin. Bend both knees a little. Slide your right foot under your left leg. That's fine. Pull the foot across so your right knee is more in line with your groin. The groin. So your right knee comes towards the center line of your body. Now put your left foot on the other side of the right leg. Slide it across. So your left knee and right knee begin to stack in something of Gomukhasana. You may not get to perfect Gomukhasana, but there is no such thing. So So this is both thighs coming in towards the center. You're squeezing in to create some flexion. This gets a lot of the outer hip. It stretches differently than the other pose, but it also, I'm going to note, if you flex your thighs and push your feet down in the floor, it's not as easy to lift up your spine. You can't quite get the same pelvic lift here in this pose that you can, say, even in Padmasana or in pigeon pose. This is a nice hip stretch, but this hip stretch and seated pose is similar to how we sit and we allow ourselves to slouch down. There's no active lift to our spine. We can sit up straight, like, you can sit here and not fall. But even if you push your feet to the floor, it's not like, you get that big ascending high point. Switch your legs up so you stretch the other side. So this is your thighs towards the center groin. So switch your legs so you just stretch the other side for a nice moment. So as you stretch the other side, notice here, pushing down through the feet, even though you're not getting the ascended spine, you get a nice hip stretch, your legs are still active. So this shows us, this versus what we did in pigeon pose kind of really shows that if you're trying to get your spine to lift, it's okay to take your feet apart a little bit and then work down through the legs, take your thighs open and push down through the legs to get a lift. That's why Mr. Iyengar, I think, put so many standing poses as the first in a lot of series of work, especially if you ever look at like his books on therapy or poses for therapeutic work, tons of it's all standing poses to lift. All the spinal stuff starts with standing poses. A lot of standing poses that are very wide legged. Very few of them have squeezed the thighs together. A few more seconds here, and then we'll go on to the next, and we'll be getting towards the end. Because he's assuming that you don't have back pain. If Tristan just asked, then why does his practices a lot have squeezing thighs together in Tadasana? I said because he's assuming that you're not coming with back pain to a normal class. It's like if you have back pain, tell him, and his first thing will be to take your feet apart, right? So many of you may have heard me in classes in the past. Tadasana, your feet can be apart if your balance is bad, or you have back pain, or you're pregnant, right? It's all the same stuff. All right, take your legs out, stretch them both out straight. Dandasana, legs nice and long, thighs flexed, chest lifted. So even for a moment, bring your thighs together here, push your heels down, squeeze your thighs together tight, and try to lift your spine up tall. Even use your fingers. Use your fingertips next to you. Lift your spine tall in Dandasana with your thighs squeezing in and heels pushing down. And now take your arms straight up and feel where in your back gets pressure, upper mid or lower. Okay. Squeeze your thighs in as you do this and feel how your back changes. Now bring your arms down. Take your feet about hip width apart, maybe a tad wider. Flex your thighs, push your heels down, squeeze them in, but don't slide them together. Just squeeze in a little bit. Lift your spine up nice and tall. Now take your arms up again. It's a million times easier to sit upright, isn't it? Your legs work harder, but now your groin isn't overworking and your low back isn't working. So now your spine your leg muscles are actually being used to lift you. And this idea of you have to squeeze everything super tight is misconception to what your body's actually going through. Bring your arms down, bend both knees slightly, slide your right foot under your left leg. So your left foot is just under your right foot is just under your left thigh. Bend your left knee and place your left foot on your right knee. pointed feet. Each foot is very pointed, as Tristan just pointed out. So with each foot very pointed, now that your thighs are open from the groin, now that you have this insight, how we sometimes overwork the legs, we try to work the legs by squeezing in too much and we squeeze the groin. Can you let this be a different pose now? How your legs are actually widening from the inner groin out, like in pigeon pose. So your inner groin muscles, when they work, are about the lift of the body instead of the narrowing of those muscles. So flex the thighs, push your right foot into the floor, push your left foot into the thigh, and just try to let your thighs rotate outward from them being flexed and let your spine lift. And just hold this for a little bit. We're not going to even go full-blown lotus with this today because of time constraints, right? But those of you who've been here, this is really about as far as you need to go to start opening the hips. You can take this and practice with it. But I wanted to give you this insight to the placement and movement of the body. So you can go practice it with some of your other seated and standing poses. So you get this very active openness where the lift of the spine does not come because you're gripping the lower pelvis, right? Everything's about opening in yoga, right? So the rotation of the thighs, the opening from the inner groin creates a lift of the spine, lets you sit up taller, makes your legs energized, energizes your spine. So even when you're sitting at your computer, if you have a yoga strap, take your strap and place it around your thighs so your knees are wider than your hips and try to break it. Push your thighs out against the strap and push your feet into the floor, and you will sit very strong and tall in your chair, I promise. Switch your legs, slide your legs out. Bend your left knee and slide the foot under the right thigh first, and then your right ankle up on left thigh. Try to do it without your hands. Can you make your legs do the movement on their own? There you go, Prachi. Good job. So I encourage you, like, don't use this lesson just as I'm here to get an hour of stretching in and then go on my day. Get on your mat tomorrow, because I'll be here Thursday, and try some different poses and see what it is to step a little wider with your feet in line with your hips instead of narrowed. And maybe your spine and back will feel better. Point your feet, push your feet down into the respective surface. Left foot pushes firmly down into the floor, right foot pushes down into the left thigh. You get your lift. Keep those feet pointed. This is what will actually help this action of letting the inner groin open so the thighs do the work is where we actually get the mobility of the hip for the knee to touch the floor and then go to the full pose. We did a lot of pigeon pose and our hips are a little more open, but for me, I'm just giving an example. When I'm here in this pose with you, I'm working this pose out. I'm pushing my right foot down. My right groin wants to grip. That means this knee is not ready to go down. I have to actively work on flexing my right thigh, the larger quad, and moving my right knee out to my right, and then pressing the foot down and my groin releases. If you feel your groin grip, that means you're pulling your thigh towards the center. And that's going to pull on your spine and your knee over time. Ooh, nice, Pradima. See, slide that right knee out to the right and it opens. Good rotation, much healthier, much better. Good. Yeah, everyone's doing really good. A few more seconds. Like I said, we're not going to go full lotus with this because I would like for you to practice with this on your own a little bit. And Thursday we'll keep working on it. Because this movement, this opening from the groin out to create space in the hip is where a lot of hip mobility comes from. That inner groin muscle has to stop doing the work of the thigh. The glutes will always be fired. There's very few points in seated poses where your glutes are just like hanging out. Tristan asked, what about the glutes? You want to practice keeping your glutes engaged, not, gripped up tight, because they can push on your groin. It can push your groin forward, but your glutes will be active a little bit to help the thigh fire. And they need to be because, say, when you're in shoulder balance and you do Padmasana to do some of the later poses, You need those glute muscles. All right, take the legs out. Nice job. Lay on your back. If you want something under your knees or your head, take the time to get it now. Don't take off and get a margarita yet. Stick with the last 2 or 3 minutes of class. Margarita. Maybe that's the next one. Let the eyes close. Tongue away from the roof of the mouth. Cover yourself, whatever you need. And take a few breaths. Who showed up in your yoga class? I had all my students show up, of course, but like I said, your practice on the mat is, in a sense, communing with that part of yourself that's just going to show up, whether it was a happy part, a sad part that was determination, all those pieces. All the great things that yoga gives us the opportunity to create, it's through connecting to our own self, all those parts of ourselves that we may not want to look at, but we live with. Because there's no part of ourselves that is weak. We all know that love, and sadness, and anger, and joy, and shame, fear are incredibly powerful. We may not like all of them, but they are powerful. You are powerful because you are all these things. So as you rest for the next few minutes, who showed up in your yoga practice? Which parts of yourself, my friends? And even if you don't want them to be here, if the practice don't bring them up, it's their time too. You know that I am ever so grateful they are here, just like each and every one of you are as an individual. I'm grateful that those parts of yourselves are here. And rest and enjoy the fruits of your yogic practice.